Well, yesterday I went into some detail talking about the dynamics of slander, people besmirching you, saying things about you that aren't true, making you look bad in the eyes of others, and all those sorts of things. And that is a very disconcerting experience, I have to admit. None of us like us. All of us would love to avoid it. And hopefully that we will be able to. Or at least when there is people get crosswise with one another, there's a way of working through that so that relationship can survive and not be destroyed. But I think at the same time, there's the other side of the coin. What if what they're saying is true? Maybe they're rumoring and maybe they're saying bad things about you. But if it's true, then it's really important that we own it. Because the second part of what Peter said in that passage was that it's better to suffer for doing good than for doing evil. And the whole point is that if we have done something that's wrong, if we've done something that's evil, then we need to honestly own that and say, you know what I did wasn't right, and I need to confess it. I need to admit that. That in a way is the only way to finish it. I talked earlier, last week I talked about, getting pulled over by the police for speeding. And I say that because there was a period in my life where that was a fairly regular occurrence. In fact, at one particular point early in my life, I got so many tickets, my insurance company canceled me. And they weren't egregious things. It wasn't like I was going 90 and a 30, but at the same time, I was just always kind of like doing 45 and a 35. And in my mind, I realized as I analyzed it that I had kind of rationalized that these speed limits are unreasonably low. I should be able to drive faster. Now, being from California originally, in California, you just go with the flow of traffic. And I've been driving on the I-5. I remember when driving I-15 at midnight, and I'm doing 85 miles an hour in a 70, and I got passed by a policeman on a bike going 95, and he wasn't chasing anybody. And I remember it just shocked me. But it was kind of like, he wasn't going to waste his time pulling me over for just going 15 miles over the speed limit in the middle of the night when nobody else was on the freeway. But the whole point was I had created this kind of rationalization in my mind that it was okay if I felt it was safe, that made it safe. And when I moved to Spokane, I felt like they didn't have that same view. To them, 30 meant 30. I was shocked. And I remember how, in my mind, I felt like this is unfair until finally the Lord really confronted me and said, it's the law, and you as a Christian, you need to submit to the law. So even today, though I joke about, liking speed and going fast, one of the things I honestly recognize at nearly 75 years of age, I'm getting pretty close to it, that I don't have the response time, I don't have the vision that I once had, and that I really need to be more concerned about driving the speed limit because I'm really more at risk at getting into a dangerous situation. But the other thing was to be able to honestly say that when you do the crime, you have to do the time. And I found that when I was having to go, if I went to traffic court, this was in the old days, they would cut my fine in half. So I would go to traffic court just so I could save money. But I remember when the judge asked me, why were you speeding? I honestly said, because I wasn't paying attention, and I just felt that I could go faster than the speed limit, so I was wrong. And one of the judges said something to me that was very helpful. He said, you'll get away with speeding 200 times, and then the 201st time you're going to get caught. You might even have an accident. So the odds are there. And if you want to live with those odds, you can continue to exceed the speed limit. Sooner or later, it's going to get you. Now I think the odds are even worse because they have cameras, red light cameras that catch you. I got a speeding ticket through a speeding zone, going through a school zone that I didn't even know was a school zone. But I only found out because I got a letter in the mail telling me I had sped and then a picture of me driving my car. So I realized, I'm not going to argue that. I just paid the fine and realized I got to be more attentive to those things. But I'm saying it's not useful to live in denial. There's no happiness in that. And I talked about the conscience last week, and I think and even in this week, and I think it's important for us to always be mindful that having a clear conscience means it begins by admitting what is true, not simply claiming what you want to be true. And I found that even in my relationship with my wife. One of the things that was interesting is I read a report one time that really humbled me. It said that women have a 15% better recall of the past than men do. And I suddenly looked at this and realized that when my wife is saying to me, no, this is what happened, that she's probably more accurate than I am. She's probably remembering it more precisely than I do. And I need to recognize that, where I'm saying, you're probably right. Does that mean she's perfect? Well, obviously not. I mean, there's sometimes that she gets it wrong. But most of the time, she doesn't. Most of the time, I get it wrong. And so it's one of those kind of things that when you have people on the outside saying, no, this is what you did, this is what you said, you need to own that. And I even do it with my staff sometimes. I say, did I say this? Is that how I said that? And I've had sometimes saying, well, you didn't say it precisely that way, but that was the impression I got. That's what I thought you meant. And I realized I have to take responsibility for that, to not clarify what I'm really saying and what I really want. So all these things are critical factors, but we find that communication is the most essential part of our relationship with people in this world. And it's also the most part of our life that's in peril, because miscommunication is something that's very easy to do. And sometimes people intentionally miscommunicate. They purposely give false information. And that's a whole other dynamic that I don't want to get into. But you see, even good people mess up. Even good people get it wrong. And as we see in the story of Adam and Eve in Genesis 3, that hiding it, pretending it wasn't our fault, blaming other people, projecting other people, the problem is that you may convince everybody around you, but when you've done something wrong, it's like drinking a poison. It's a toxin that's going into your system. And it's like being bit by a snake. You want to get that out of your system as quickly as you can. You know, you used to watch the cowboy movies where they cut the wound and they suck it out to get the venom out and then spit it out. You know, it's kind of like that. You want God to suck that stuff out of you before it has a chance to begin to enter into the bloodstream of your life. Because the toxin that will begin to grow inside of you, and you'll kill you a little bit at a time. I mean, I have a genetic disorder that affects myself and probably my kids. But the bottom line is my body holds on to too much iron. I have excess iron in my blood system. I have iron-rich blood. Can you believe it? But over time, that's toxic. You know, you get metal buildup in all your organs and in your joints and so forth, causes arthritis and causes, you can get cirrhosis of the liver and heart disease, and all these things can come as a result of it. So the way we deal with that is we just actually draw blood. I need to get that out of my system. So, right now, once a week, I have them take a pint of blood out of me, which is fine with me. That doesn't bother me too much. But the whole point is that I need to have that expunged from my system, and hopefully my body will, over time, begin to moderate that so that it might be, as one of the nurses said to me, my body will begin to behave itself. That's the goal. But the whole idea is I can't leave that in there because it will eventually kill me. So when we have things like unconfessed sin in our life, we need to see it in that way. It's like this toxic buildup in your system of something that unaddressed will actually sabotage your happiness, but maybe even destroy your health and your happiness as well. It destroys your relationship. And one of the reasons that people are grossly unhappy today is because they're so lonely, and people either don't know how to have a relationship or they sabotage the relationships that they have. It's important for us to understand that the friendships we have are probably the most valuable thing we have in this world, beginning with our friends and family. And sometimes those don't survive because sometimes those relationships are toxic. And that's a whole nother dynamic that we can talk about. There are people who are toxic and they're not safe to be around. But at the same time, there are other people who are, and if misunderstandings and difficulties come up, which they always do, and that relationship is one that you want to keep, then it's going to mean that there's an effort on your part not only to share with them their feelings, but to hear their feelings, to understand why they feel the way they do. And if you do, then like Paul said, or Jesus said, then you've won your brother. And that's important in this day and age, because the day is coming, I fear, that having people in our life that we can trust is going to become even more difficult as the world turns increasingly away from Christ and into the darkness. Well, we'll finish this up tomorrow. God bless you.